For now, back to one of our early stories. We're taking a look at coalition governments. Of course, this was on the back of the formation of the multi-party charter for South Africa, officially launched yesterday. That, in fact, wraps up today. 5 p.m. is when we await all the nitty-gritties about how and what is set to unfold. Perhaps at this point, though, on the back of Natasha Piri as well as Mzwai, giving us the latest there. Let's also get some analysis from one of our political analysts, Professor Sethulego Matebesi. Prof, good afternoon, and thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Hi, good afternoon. It's an absolute privilege to be here.
We have been exploring the possibilities and probabilities for the country at large. We need to safeguard human development, political progress, economic progress, business sentiments as well. So at this point, given what has transpired at the convention, the multi-party charter for South Africa coalition wrapping up today, in your opinion, what does this ultimately mean for the democracy of South Africa?
No, I think we need to start off by indicating this is quite commendable for political parties, any civil society organization like political parties to meet, whereas now opposition parties. But fact of the matter is for them to meet and to deliberate about what I would call a very fundamental aspect of our life, which is politics. That is commendable because dialogue, continued dialogue, it's one way that we can address some of the challenges. But fact of the matter, one major question will be, will this multi-party national convention make a significant impact? That is another question, but I think it's quite commendable for South Africa to demonstrate that our civil society organizations, political parties, formations, can talk across the.
All right, so perhaps at this point we are in agreement that we are testing the strength of our country's democracy, and it does provide different scenarios and avenues. So perhaps as we remain hopeful and we really look at the dynamics that are set to be associated with this, I wonder if we could speak to the issue of leadership at this point, because that is rather pertinent. The issue of trust and relationship deficit is something that we'll have to develop. Relationships take time, they take intention, and effort as well as resources. I just wonder, given the timelines at this point, as we edge closer to elections, what's also been reflected there?
No, I think what is very important is that you've got a situation where elections, you now have the opposition parties meeting, unlike what happened in our local government, where an election will take place and it's only afterwards that these parties decide on how they are going to navigate around the challenges of service provision and governance. But we have seen it numerous. Certain parties goes into these kind of negotiations only later on to backtrack. And I think that will be very unfortunate, because I do believe that at least for these parties who are meeting, this is a glorious opposition, because at one time, I strongly believe that the opposition in South Africa were quite united and very strong, but we took a few steps backwards, and perhaps this is an opportunity for them to chart a way forward, not only about 2024, but even afterwards. We still have local government elections coming after 2024, and perhaps this will be a template of how these parties can work together to enhance services for the good of every single South African.
Absolutely, but the track record of coalition governance in South Africa hasn't been the greatest to date. Sentiments from William Gumede as well during the media briefing saying that the leader of the largest party will be the leader of government. There's also consensus emerging about how the cabinet will be streamlined. So I want to bring in the issue of ideologies and identities, even the sizes of the parties, the 7 parties that have come together for this pact. Are you worried about a concern in terms of the, clash in decision making? Egos are at play. There are also perhaps parties who don't like each other and will rule on that basis as opposed to the broader interests of society. They could also introduce new agendas. These are just scenarios unfolding in my head, some of the questions that are lingering. How would you respond to those concerns?
No, these are hypothetical and potential scenarios that you are putting out there. They are real for me. I've heard one of the smaller party president or leader stating that we are not small parties, but we need to face the reality. I mean, if you look at three of these parties are definitely, they will contest national elections for the first time. And the question is, will they now garner enough support, electoral support, to be able to challenge the African National Congress? I don't think so. But for me, it is clear that the Democratic Alliance will dominate in terms of leadership at this multi-party national convention. I can't foresee how they will unseat the African National Congress. You don't have the EFF there, ideological issues there, but yet you've got a Democratic Alliance, which is still uncertain of whether they would want to work with the African National Congress. And perhaps that's where the issue of trust also comes from. At what point will the Democratic Alliance make a decisions about this particular aspects? And I think that should not be perhaps one aspect that will also encourage some of these smaller party at one stage to say, look, we are going to withdraw from this multi-party national convention.
Prof, you make a pertinent point. These are scenarios that are potentially unfolding. They're not set in stone. And so at this point, perhaps giving agency to the voters at large, what do you think the role of active citizenry is going to be, perhaps as we edge closer to elections? What should the public be doing, perhaps to exercise their right, to ensure that they exercise the best options available in the timeframes available come 2024?
Yeah, very good question, because I mean, it will be meetings, it will be campaigning, but you can't have all these political processes without reaching out to the electorate. We've got a huge problem in terms of voter turnout in South Africa, and perhaps that's where I strongly believe that now, outside of competitive politics, you've got a situation where these forums like these can play a significant role in encouraging South Africans to register, because we all know to register does also not translate into voting, but it's also not the responsibility of the IEC to provide voter education, and perhaps that's where these structures will come in terms of motivating South Africans to vote. We still have huge problem. People are disgruntled with the current situation in South Africa, mainstream politics, and that's why we have seen over a number of years how protest, community protest, or whatever form of alternative means, democratic means of engaging with the government of the day have emerged, because people feel that your formal structures of engagement, like political organizations, local ward council meetings, are actually politically constrained, and that is a huge problem. And I strongly believe that all of us has a role to play, even our tertiary institutions, to inculcate a culture where people can take pride in consolidating the little that we still have left of our democracy in this country.
Prof, thank you for your time with us on the SABC and for those sentiments. Political analyst Professor Sethulego Matebesi.